So it's 6:30 in the morning. I'm in the car. It's so cold that the dashboard says ice on road. I'm freezing, and the windscreen is completely iced up. So I have no idea how everyone is going to feel at the sleep out, but it's certainly cold in the car, and I have the heating on full. So it's November 2nd, 2018, the morning after the student sleep out at Cardiff University Students' Union. I'm about to drive back there and see how the students feel after sleeping outside in sub-zero temperatures. It was so cold, I spent about 10 minutes defrosting the car windscreen. I'm heading now to the university to pick up where we left off.
Really cold. It is currently
1 degrees.
My phone's saying 0 at the moment.
Oh, wow.
It got down to -1 at one point.
I felt that. Yeah. Cold. But nah, I slept fine.
Can you imagine doing that like every night throughout winter though?
Yeah, no. Like, but we had luxuries. Like before we went to bed, we went to the toilet, we went and got a cup of tea, we warmed ourselves up by just walking into the building. So that was so much easier. And then we're also, like, some people don't have people around them, so we've got the body heat of others as well. So yeah. Sorry, I just realised I sound like a man.
My first question is very easy. Good morning.
Good morning.
How was it?
Cold. So cold. Funnily enough, it's actually colder right now than I have been the entire night, which is so weird.
Yeah.
Like, it was cold, don't get me wrong, but it's cold now.
So there's ice on the roads, there's ice on the cars.
That makes
I was sat in my car for 20 minutes defrosting it. That's how cold it is. How was your quality of sleep?
Awful.
Very
really poor. Although I do think the massive luminescent bright lights above us contribute that quite a lot.
It is very bright, isn't it?
Yeah,
very bright.
But
I feel like
I did not sleep.
No.
Like hardly at all.
It was not ideal.
Are you glad you did it?
Yes.
Yeah,
very
it's
glad.
tiring. But I'm also glad that I get to go home now and sleep.
And
in my
close
own
our
bed.
eyes. Yeah.
Do you reckon you'll do more work for the homeless?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope so.
Yeah. It's sad. Isn't
I feel like you kind of can't like just stop. Like, that's it then, I've done my part.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Yeah. You can't. It's really sad.
In general, spirits were high, but for some, the reality that rough sleepers do this every night was starting to hit home. Good morning. How was it?
Oh, I'm just quite worn out. Like, I don't know how they can do it every day and then still get up to like do stuff. Like, my head just really hurts.
Are you glad you did it?
Yeah, well, it's worth me giving up my energy, which is disposable, for them who can't really do much about it. So,
Has it changed your mindset at all on the way rough sleepers not only are treated, but just the way that they sleep their lives?
it just makes me kind of sad that we don't really realise how bad their conditions are, and then we still just ignore them anyway. Well, a lot of people, and we kind of see them as a nuisance, and they're just other people who are having a really hard time. So,
Has this inspired you?
yeah, I mean, I always want to help people in a worse state than me, but just knowing that they have to wake up every day and probably feel like shit.
Some students had gone into the union building to warm up with hot drinks. This group told me how much their efforts had raised for their chosen charity. How's everyone feeling?
Horrendous.
Yeah. Are you glad you did it?
Yeah.
It is lovely and warm in here, actually.
That makes it feel a lot better. Between the 5 of us, we've raised £943.
940, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And where's that money going?
Mine's only going to the volunteering society.
So is mine. Mine's half to the volunteering and half to Young Minds.
Would you do it again?
I would, yeah.
You wouldn't? Why?
I feel horrendous. I feel like I've done it once, I've raised a lot of money. I'd rather just raise it in other ways in the future and not do sleep out. That was awful.
So it has inspired you then to do more?
Yeah, definitely. Like, me and Alisha went around town yesterday and we raised loads and loads of food. So like we could do that like more often.
Alisha and Lorena have started their own project to help the homeless by collecting leftover food from shops and restaurants in the city and giving it to those on the streets.
Myself and Lorena, we went round to loads of places yesterday for them to donate food, and luckily we wasn't allowed to, unfortunately we wasn't allowed to leave here to go and give out the food, but that's something we're going to be doing tonight. But I think that's something that we're going to be doing continuously anyway, because so many places throw out waste, so why not go and get the waste and then deliver it to the homeless people. So I think, as you just said, you'll be giving more now over the winter, well, throughout anyway. I think that will be really good, and hopefully we'll be able to give them some foods, and even if we go into supermarkets and they're able to give us like scarves and hats, and even donating from ourselves, I think that'll be really important.
Who's that for? It's charity.
It's not, it's just what we decided yesterday. I'm able to understand now how other people feel when they're less fortunate, and
Does it make you feel more kind of sympathy for people who have to do this not out of choice?
yeah, definitely. Like, it's like we've done this out of choice. We've also had teas, coffees, snacks upstairs. We've brought our own stuff as well. This is luxury compared to what other people have had, and like some people have struggled with this. So people who are actually living on the streets, it must be so much more difficult for them. And if some people are struggling like this, those, like, I don't know how they actually do get through the winter months, because it gets so cold here, and the rain, the weather is just so, well, it's awful here anyway. You never know what you're going to get.
My next question was on the city's preparedness for the winter ahead. Late 2017 and early 2018 saw heavy snowfall in South Wales and plummeting temperatures. I wanted to know how these students felt the homeless community and the city would cope with the cold winter ahead. They're saying that this winter's going to be colder than last year. Of course, last year we had the first snow in 30 years of that level. Does it make you worry about people, rough sleepers, in the coming months?
Yeah, I think last year it was so open up, like, because it was so cold, and everyone did worry about the homeless then. I know there was a load of charities that were going out, even people who wasn't within a charity, they were going out giving homeless people blankets, hats, scarves, just to keep them warm. This year then, that if it's November, it was like January last year, wasn't it, that it was so cold. So yeah, thinking about them and their conditions, like, it's going to be awful, so hopefully they stay safe and stay warm.
I'll definitely be doing more
Yeah.
this winter. Like, it does open your eyes, and like, I've obviously always been aware of the homeless and like done, you know, little bits and bobs, but I think this winter I'll definitely be doing more to help them, like, in any way I can.
Do you think the city's prepared for the winter ahead for the rough sleepers?
No, I don't think anyone will ever be prepared. No.
Especially with the numbers rising as much as it is, like, some of the stats we found out last night were quite eye-opening.
Scary, really.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever be prepared there.
Like, does it make you worry a lot about the rough sleepers?
Yeah, it does, but like, you don't really hear a lot like about them in the media. Like, it's gonna, like, I don't want to sound like really like grim, but surely like last year when it was that cold, like a few of them like must have like passed away from being like that freezing and not having anything to do about it. Like, am I wrong in thinking that? Like, I don't know, obviously, but like it's like things like that, like they're not put in the media, and I feel like to raise awareness and stuff, like things like that should be, because like I feel like I don't know, I'm tired.
It's alright. No, you make some really good points. She's not wrong in thinking that. The awareness for homelessness in Cardiff surged in late 2017 when the death of a 32-year-old woman hit the headlines. She died in a tent less than 500 metres from where I was recording that night at the Students' Union. This inspired new efforts to raise money and awareness for the services offered by the council, charities and local churches to get people off the streets and into safety during the cold weather. I'm heading off. Just want to say thanks for being part of this documentary. At the end of the sleep out, the feelings were clear. All the students were moved by the prevalence of homelessness and rough sleepers in their city,
enough to take action.
Thanks very much for letting me come and record.
That's all right. Thank you for coming.
And not just by doing the sleep out. It was inspiring to hear students like Alisha and Lorena take matters into their own hands, collecting food for the homeless.
Thank you very much.
Driving away, I collected my thoughts about what I'd learned at the student sleep out.
Everyone wants to see a change. I think seeing a lot of the first year students doing this in reaction to seeing the problem in Cardiff in only 2 months of living here, and then being inspired to not only do the student sleep out, but as you heard 2 of the girls talk about, they actually started on their own doing food donations from various businesses, and they're going to go tonight and feed the homeless, which I think is just amazing. Very eye-opening.
I'd asked all the students, was Cardiff prepared for winter? I wanted Thomas's take on this.
I'll just say very simply, is Cardiff prepared for winter?
I don't think Cardiff is ever prepared for winter. This winter, I think, is going to be particularly tough. Around this time of year, when the weather drops, we just see people die. We do. And that's something that I don't think anybody, I haven't been in this job as long as some of my peers, but that's something I don't think anybody who's been in the job for 12, 15, 20 years ever really is able to deal with. It's hard not to wonder what you can do, what you could have done differently when that happens. But it's important to try and think about how we can approach this winter with more preparation. And the winter provisions, that's the churches opening up their spaces for people to use. The winter provisions, I think, will cover everybody who is able to get themselves into floor space or into one of those churches. There is enough room for the homeless community to be able to get in somewhere that has a roof. That doesn't mean that everybody will go, and they certainly shouldn't be blamed if they choose not to, because I hear time and time again comments from people saying, well, if they're not going to get themselves into this accommodation, then they deserve their lot. They've been given the help there, right? So they can't take it. That's on them. But it's not, because we're dealing with people who are often too vulnerable to ask for help. When you have absolutely nothing, your principles and your personality are incredibly important to you. And when you've been time and time again rejected or let down, particularly for some of these people by religious organisations or organisations that are tied to religions, they view them with spite. And often as well, there are people who physically, often because of substance abuse, won't be able to get themselves to the hostels, and they will, we see people who, we will see people who will, who will pass away because their immune systems are weaker, and for anybody who thinks that because somebody is because somebody has a substance misuse issue, because somebody is a heroin user and they can't get themselves up to get into the warmth, that's their own doing. Try heroin and see if you can kick it the next day. You know what I mean? It's try having nothing and having heroin and kicking it the next day. These people need more assistance, and I think we need more people in Cardiff to rally together as a community and give their time and notice the issue. And importantly, when they do give their time and when they do ask for help, to ask how best to help, not just the homeless involved, but ask people in these organisations, how can I help?
Good afternoon, Whipple Christian Centre.
Hi there, my name's Harry. This wasn't the first time I'd heard churches helping the homeless. My producer Tanya and I phoned churches around the city and very quickly found answers. Homeless outreach programme going at the moment.
We're involved with the TAV Centre.
Okay.
You've come across that one, which does homeless outreach.
I haven't actually. Could you give me some more information about it?
Part of Glenwood Church, and they do, I think it's weekly meals for the homeless. So we've got a team that are going involved and doing that once a month.
I was given the number for Glenwood Church, who alongside other churches run the TAV Centre in Cardiff.
Good afternoon, Glenwood Church Centre.
Hi there, my name's Harry. I've been told to phone... I wanted to learn more about the TAV Centre and what they were doing to help homeless people.
Well, the basis of what we do, I think, is just in broad terms, is that we do have another building in not just off City Road in Cardiff, where we provide food for the homeless. I think it's on a Sunday afternoon or evening rather.
Okay.
But we provide clothes. We got a stock of clothes that people donate to us. Also, in the very cold winter months, we're involved in the overnight stays.
Yes.
Along with other churches. So in a crux, that's it.
Okay.
But I'm sure my colleagues will be able to explain a bit more detail to you.
Yeah.
Let me give you my email address.
I was put in touch with Martin Moss, one of the lead organisers at the TAV Centre. He spent many years volunteering and helping those on the streets. We met up at South Wales Baptist College and sat down in the chapel. I wanted to find out more about what their initiative was to combat homelessness and rough sleeping in Cardiff.
It's more of a... So just tell me about the project that you run here.
Well, I'm part of Glenwood Church, and part of Glenwood Church faith community is a social action group. Run as a separate charity, and it's called Hope Cardiff. And part of that is working with homeless people and vulnerable people. We have a facility just off City Road where it's an old gospel hall that's been converted into a cafe downstairs, lounge area upstairs, and we provide Glenwood Church as a team that does it every Sunday, feeding the homeless people. We also have facilities for clothes, second-hand clothes we get. There's provision for them to shower if they want to, and there's provision now for them to wash their clothes if they want to. And we've just started up, we see the need, and it was funny really, because when we were talking about it, the council actually approached us about a similar thing, as about somewhere for people to go during the day. So we've just started opening up on Friday afternoon, so people will come there, and we do things like art and crafts, bakery, cooking, trying to just encourage, and it's only, and the council are working hard to try to get them involved in doing things and actually looking for venues to do things with them, and so this tied in good with that, because that's what we recognise, that people need somewhere to go. So so that's what our project is all about, and if we had more volunteers, we'd open more days of the week. The church funds it, individuals fund. The people, our volunteers, certainly on a Sunday, they're not all from my church. There's a few come from other churches, different denominations, and even people with no faith come to help us. We're quite happy for any help we can get. So,
does it take a lot of convincing to get people who you see as vulnerable on the streets to come in and use the services?
I think it depends on their background, depends what their disposition is. It's some of it is trust, some of it is when we did the night shelter, some people, because we said you've got to be in by a certain time, and they want to be out begging, or they'll say to me, we can't drink in there, can we? And we say no, and they won't come in. Then for others, it's just they are fearful that they're going to be in there with people who are on drugs and drink. They do say they have got enough beds for people if they can just get the people to go in them. But like I said, last year we opened up when it snowed, 4 nights on the trot, and took up the sort of slack they had. But they have got a lot of places. It's just getting people to go in them. So.
Have you seen an increase in people using your services? So we were saying in this documentary that we've seen an increase in people sleeping rough on the streets in the last 5 years.
Well, I see, I know I've seen the increase in people sleeping rough on the streets. I've been doing this work for 15 years now, and I've definitely seen an increase in the people who come to us. They're not all homeless. The work we do, they're not all homeless people, a lot of them are vulnerably housed, so it's, for some of them, it's like a social evening. But what I find is, I notice the people, like you get to know the people coming in, and there's always new people coming in. But it's strange, because some weeks we might just have 20 people, other weeks we can have 50, 60 people come through the door. And I think if everybody I know that comes in this place one time or another, we couldn't hold them. There'd be 400 people. But I think the council has said that they were aware of about 80 people rough sleeping. Yeah. So, we don't turn anybody away. I'm sure that sometimes some of the guys that come into us will come out to the pub and come in for a free burger. But you've got to put up with that, because it's to make sure you get to the people who need the help. You can expect to be taken advantage of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we welcome everybody.
Do you think there's a reason or reasons for the increase in people sleeping rough and homeless?
It's a difficult one, because you look at where people come from when they become homeless. I think there's a lot of family situations. You look at where they come from. There's kids coming out of care when they hit 18, nowhere to go. There's people, I've seen older people who marriages have broken up, and there's lots of these reasons why people become homeless. And they have nowhere to go. I think another thing, again, we spoke earlier and you said about people on the street say, they don't get much help from the council. But I think Cardiff, between the council, wherever they reckon, these people perhaps don't recognise where the help comes from, but from the churches and the council and even non-church people, there is a lot of provision in Cardiff for homeless people. None of them should go hungry. There is plenty of food given out in Cardiff, and clothes and things like that. So I think it's, people get to know about it, and and people come into Cardiff from outside. A lot of the people aren't from Cardiff. You know what I mean? You get people coming from the valleys, you get people coming in from other parts of the UK, you get people coming in from abroad.
Yeah. So,
and I think one of the reasons is it's known, it's well known that, homeless people, whereas they might struggle with the accommodation, they do know there's a lot of provision in Cardiff.
So do you think Cardiff is, I've written here, what do you think of the state of the issue in Cardiff? Do you think that Cardiff is more of a safe haven than another cities such as Birmingham, or do you think it's just more concentrated here?
One of the problems, and you see it, like say when I talk about doing street passing, one of the issues, Cardiff, it's only a small city, right? Population 350,000, but the city centre is very compact and concentrated. More bars and clubs per square metre than anywhere else in the UK. You know what I mean? And you're looking at less than a square mile, and more often than not, within that square mile, mainly 2 streets. And everybody congregates. So you like on a weekend, you get all the people coming in for shopping. it's concentrated. You get people coming in the evenings for entertainment and things, and you know that's for homeless people. It's great because there's lots of people about. You know, people sit there begging. You know, I'm sure a lot of them get a lot of money. You know what I mean? They get a lot of food because it's so concentrated. You know what I mean? It's, you know, I can't think of another city like it. You know, you might have a section of a city like it, like you say Birmingham. There might be an area in Birmingham, but you know, you got Cardiff. It's like, I think it's probably two extremes. You know, homeless people might be noticeable because there's one here and there's one there, and you're walking along, you see, there's a poor guy in his own there. And then there's the other extreme where you've got a row of tents.
The tents, yeah. So a lot of them disappeared recently, but
the council moved them on, I think. They took orders out on them, and
because they all appeared kind of back in November, didn't they?
It's been it's a double-edged sword. My first feeling about it, because we've given tents out to people rather than see them sleeping on the street. But you know, when you walk around the city centre, it's not acceptable because, first of all, it's unsightly. Well, not first of all, but the reasons are it's unsightly. You know, it's not good for families walking along to see it. They create a mess, and then of course, the people themselves who are living in these tents, it's not hygienic for them. You know, they're living in all this. You know, and it is this. I know you've seen it. There's rubbish there and everything. And like, I think 4 of the people who live on the streets that have died in the last year, 2 of them were in tents, and if they hadn't been in tents, they might not have died. The other thing is you don't know what's going on inside them, drug dealing, you know, things like this. So I think it needed to be moved on. So I think we've changed our policy now where we won't give out tents. We've discussed it with the council outreach team on, you know, and while they're in tents, it makes it even more difficult for the council people to get them to go into temporary accommodation. So it is like a double-edged sword. You know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But I can see. First of all, I thought, well, no, I'll carry on giving tents out. I said people got to have something over their heads. Perhaps what the council should do is try and provide an area where they can put the tents and they can put toilets there and things like that. But then again, as from my own experience, because of the other things I do walking around, some of these people have got a roof over their head, but they're using the tents as a base for begging. And it's how do you sort out who's genuine and who's not genuine. Yeah, when you get to know who these people are. You know what I mean? So.
You mentioned drugs and drug dealing. We have heard about a drug called spice that's being taken and dealt around Cardiff. Yeah. I'm not sure if this maybe is more relevant to your street pastor experience, but have you experienced this?
I think it's more with homeless people. It's difficult from the street passing point of view. You know, it's hard to tell sometimes. I think you know when people are really on spice because of their condition and things like that. But you know, a lot of people when they've drunk a lot and might have taken another drug or whatever, you know, they look just as bad. Yeah. But perhaps it's not so addictive. I think alcohol takes perhaps I'll stand corrected. Takes quite a bit of time for you to get addicted to it. You know what I mean? And you build up your resistance and things like that. Where I think spice is just like an overnight thing. Yeah. And, you know, people are hooked on it. I've seen people, you know, homeless people come in and they just like zombies. And it is a problem. It definitely. All drugs are problems for me, but you know, some are worse than others. And I've talked to guys who were on heroin, and they say they'd rather go on heroin than be on spice.
Yeah. So certainly a powerful drug.
But it's not just in Cardiff; it's everywhere. Yeah. You know, I've seen documentaries on the TV where people are saying that, you know, you can get more spice in prison. You can get on the streets.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
a big issue with drugs. Yeah. Not just with the homeless, but you know, let's be honest about it. If I had to live like that, I might be on drugs and alcohol. You know what I mean? It takes away the pain. It's like, I suppose, like self-harming. You know, people turn to things because I suppose it's hope, really.
Mm.
So, you know, you can understand it. But, you know, it's just sad that what they're doing to themselves.
I think it's a part of it is about having that kind of empathy when you. It's very easy to judge people who are on the streets taking drugs and on drugs in a state where they're on drugs. It's easy to want to judge and just think, well, you deserve it, but actually putting yourself in their shoes is it's a different story.
It is. Yeah.
Can you tell me about the faith element to this project?
From a personal point of view, my personal faith, I feel called. I felt called when I came to faith myself, which was 16 years ago. I felt a calling to help people with alcohol, mainly alcohol problems. So I trained for volunteering work, and it's strange how paths lead you. I ended up working with the homeless. I did do a stint in the Frig House, which was for alcoholics, alcohol-dependent people. But, you know, you start working with homeless people and there's a lot of drugs and alcohol problems there. So it's grown on me, and I love working with people. From a faith point of view, I know a lot of people are suspicious of churches, and you know all they want to do is talk about Jesus and God and try to convert people to Christianity. That's not my view, and that's certainly from my church. Whereas we would love to see people come to faith. You know, that's not our priority. Our priority is getting alongside people. Yes, we have conversations, but you know, I've been in situations where most of the conversations are started by the people I'm talking to. You know, like we said talking earlier, we don't beat people over the head with the Bible, and we don't say to them, you can only come in here if you listen to our talks. We don't have talks. We just open up. We serve food, and we have chats with people. And well, I say chats. We listen, and I think that's the most important. I've sat with people, and I get it. You know, they tell me their life story, and even if I don't say a word to them, that's sometimes all they want. So from the faith perspective, it's, you know, my bit, you know, same when I'm out street passing, people ask me, why do you do this? And I say, it's my faith. I do it because Jesus loves me, he loves you, and he wants me to love you. That's why I do it. And that's all I say. Normally leads to other conversations because they start asking questions then. But no, it's for me, it's about, you know, in the Bible, you know, Jesus said, you know, if you give a cup of water to anybody, any of these people, you give a cup of water to me. You know, and there's, you know, about feeding people. There's a story in the Bible about the sheep and the goats, and basically, you know, people say, the disciples saying to Jesus, oh, you know, Jesus saying to them, when did you've done this, you've done that, and this, and the disciples say to him, well, when did we do this? He said, well, every time you give a cup of water, every time you give somebody some clothes, every time you visit somebody in prison, every time you help somebody, you were doing this for me. So, you know, that's my faith element, and I'm sure that's the encouragement and motivation for a lot of Christians who are involved with homeless work. It's not about feeling sorry for people. You know what I mean? It's about helping people in need. They talk about, you know, I hear things like, oh, we're going to put money into this and we're going to eradicate homelessness by 2020, 2025. And I often ask myself, well, I like to ask them, well, how are you going to do that? And they say, well, we're going to put this provision in place and that provision in place, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I think the only way, and you'll never eradicate it because there are people who love living on the street. And I'm not saying that these aren't the drug addicts and the alcoholics. They are genuine, like, you know, the old tramps, the hobos, who it's a way. I know one guy, he's always dressed smart, you know, but and he's you know, I've offered to buy him stuff when I've seen him in Greg's, and he wanted to buy it himself. You know what I mean? But he loves living. That's his way of life. I suppose it's like a gypsy in a way. You know what I mean? They like being on the road and, you know, things like that. But so what I say is that to me, the only way you'll go anywhere near eradicating it is to turn the tap off. You know what I mean? The way you stop a tank from overflowing is you stop the water going in. right? So when people first become homeless, you've got to put them in places where they're happy and comfortable and safe. The first place when they come to Cardiff, they go, the emergency accommodation, sleeping on the floor in a place like the Huggard Centre where there's lots and lots of people, some on drugs, some on alcohol. And it's no disrespect to the Huggard Centre, you know what I mean? But that's how we deal with people. And then the problem is when you put people in that situation, a lot of them will get dragged into that situation. And I always say to people, if they tell me they went for detox, I said, I'm not being funny, I said, I know a lot of these people are your friends. I said, but when you come out after your detox, they'll be your worst enemies. I said, you really need to find a new circle of friends. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, when kids come out to care, I don't think there's enough done for them to put them in a nice place to try and live for themselves, you know. It needs a bit of both. It needs money to put into, like, when you've got kids in care and people like that, and people who have got health issues, to educate them and help them to live an independent life. But I think the biggest problem is, you know, that there isn't that quality accommodation when people first become homeless. You get people coming out of jail. They right, you've done your time, get out. They give them a little bit of money in their pocket. They've been in jail for 6 months. Where are they going to go? Straight in the pub, enjoy themselves, have a bit of a break. They got nothing. You know what I mean? They got nowhere to go. What do? They reoffend. They become homeless. And I think if you want to eradicate, that's how you've got to do it. And that's the UK. There's plenty of empty buildings around. You know, the people there's plenty of empty houses, people, you know. And again, even with people who are vulnerably housed, a lot of them are living in, you know, some of the landlords are really, you know, unscrupulous people who just want the money.
Yeah, that's true.
And the conditions a lot of them live in. You know, I've heard stories and people talk to me. But I think that's the only way you can go to eradicating it.
Yeah.
And it'll take a long time. You know what I mean? It's, you know, you've got that pot and you've got to wait for people sadly to die or to turn themselves around like some people do and come out at the end. But you stop the people coming on the bottom, and it'll take years. But eventually that'll move forward, and if you reduce the people coming in, you reduce the problem.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever eradicate it.
No.
But,
it's a huge task.
But because some people don't want to. You know, you'll have people who haven't been born yet will probably come along one day and think, oh, I like this lifestyle, just being on my own, living with a pack on my back. You know, and but there we are. Yeah. You want to drink your tea?
I know, I'll gulp it down now. Thanks very much. We have heard that there are multiple outreach projects there to help those living on the streets, from the church community, the Students' Union, though I was keen to ask Thomas, was enough being done?
Well, the fact that we're seeing homeless people shows that enough isn't being done. I'm not going to undermine the efforts of the people that are working for these organisations. A lot of people are working very hard. I see a lot of very passionate people across all these different organisations in my job. I really do. And I can tell you they don't do it because it's a cushy job with great pay and good benefits. The fact that we see such an absolute epidemic of, and it is, you know, we had the shelter statistics came out a couple of days ago, and we're looking at 1 in 200 people in the UK are homeless, and that's not supported accommodation. That's rough sleeping and emergency accommodation, i.e. sleeping on a floor in a shared room with maybe 5 to even 20, 30 other people. You know, in London, it's 1 in 53. You know, I got the number. It's 320,000 people we have who are homeless in the UK at the moment. There is no way that this problem could exist if enough was being done. And these services are quite stretched, both with you know, there's a high turnover rate. There's always been a high turnover rate in the care and support industries because of the stress of the job, for one thing. At the end of the day, the main thing is that we've all had massive amounts of cuts. You know, we've all suffered losses when it comes. You know, we are not being given the tools to be able to deal with this because, for one, there aren't enough houses. There just plain aren't enough.
It was time to speak to someone who knew all the answers, right at the top. Joe Stevens is the Member of Parliament for Cardiff Central, elected in 2015 and then re-elected in 2017, Former Shadow Minister for Wales, Jo Stevens, is popular amongst her constituents, and from my own sources, a friend of the homeless community. Fighting the battle to eliminate rough sleeping from our streets and social equality is part of her political campaign. I knew I had to speak to her, and I was honoured she agreed to. As a resident of Cardiff, what are your views on the homeless situation?
For me, homelessness and rough sleeping, obviously, they're two different things sometimes. Not always, there is some overlap sometimes. They are a consequence of 9 years of austerity from both the coalition government and successive Tory governments. So, you know, if you starve public services of funds and support, this is the consequence. And if you introduce things like universal credit, this is the consequence. And if you have a huge ramp up of sanctions on people who are reliant on social security, this is the consequence. And it's pretty upsetting. It's devastating for the people who are on the streets, who've got nowhere to live or sleep. But it's awful for the people of Cardiff to see it as well, and to feel quite often pretty helpless about it.
How would you compare the situation here in Cardiff to other big cities? Do you think it's worse here, or is there just more attention on it?
I think so. The two places that I spend most of my time in are Cardiff, obviously, and London when I'm at Parliament. I would say that in Cardiff it's more visible because we're a smaller city, and where people rough sleep, the area where people tend to congregate and where they're visible, it's a smaller city, and so it's proportionately you see more of it, whereas in London it's more spread around. What we do have in Cardiff, and this is partly we've been a victim of the council's success in trying to deal with the problem, is that we have really good services in Cardiff available to try and help people with very complex needs into supported accommodation. Quite a lot of the local authorities in the areas around Cardiff don't do very much, in my view, and that means that lots of people come from other local authority areas to Cardiff because they know that there will be more help available. So quite often when you talk to people on the streets, they're not from Cardiff, they've come from somewhere else, and they've no links with Cardiff, but they know that the services here are much better.
These services, are they run by the council or are they privately run?
Predominantly council run, so there's a rough sleeper strategy in place. It's been in place since 2017, the most recent one, and that's a partnership strategy with the council, with the Huggard Centre, with the Salvation Army, with the YMCA and with the Wallich, and they all work together to try and get people into supported accommodation, but particularly, trying to get people with very, very complex needs who are unwilling or cannot engage with services for some reason, whatever the reason is, but trying to get them off the street so that we can provide other help, because obviously rough sleeping is a consequence of other needs that are not being met, or with people who've slipped through the net. So people with substance misuse problems, people who have mental health problems, people with alcohol dependency, and often people have a combination of all three. So I think for a lot of constituents here, they will contact me and quite understandably say, what are we doing? Because I've just walked down Queen Street and there are 17 people sitting in doorways, but it's not as straightforward as that. So, I know that our council team is working, every minute of every day to try and engage with people, to bring them inside, to be able to give them help and help them, access the services that are there for them. It's not just, a kind of, we're just ignoring them. That's simply not the case. But for some people, it's very, very difficult to get them to engage.
It's refreshing to hear you say the council are being proactive. Whilst I've been making this documentary, I've heard people on the street, people trying to help, who have the impression that the council aren't doing enough and are against the homeless. In the press, you hear these stories of police officers arresting rough sleepers for being in the way. There's a lot of negative stories out there. On the other hand, I've heard from people who work with or for the council about the great work they are doing. Would you say the press are unfair?
I don't think the press help when they... So, I mean, you're a journalist. You know that if you're going to write a piece about something, you write based on the information that you've got after fact-checking, and then you give the opportunity to the organisation or the person who's being criticised to respond. We live in an age where, everything is accessible. So people put stuff on social media, and because of cuts to journalism in our local papers, a lot of the journalists locally rely on social media to generate stories for them because we haven't got enough journalists to cover our local news. And it becomes very, I'm trying to think of the right word for this. It's like an emotional, instantaneous reaction to stuff. Now, I absolutely know that pretty much every night we have got spare emergency beds in our hostels in Cardiff. So there is literally, at a basic level, no need for anybody to sleep rough in Cardiff because there are beds available. Now, some people will make criticisms of the hostels and whether or not they are safe places or whether they can actually go there because you can't use drugs there, or, people are using drugs when they're not supposed to. But the fact remains that there are sufficient beds, so there is no need for anyone to sleep rough. The issue is gaining the confidence of that group of very difficult to engage with very complex needs people so that they feel sufficiently confident and they trust the people talking to them enough to be able to come inside so that we can try and help them.
I approached Cardiff City Council for comment. Nobody was available to talk on tape. However, they did send over some press releases which addressed some of my questions. They contained the following statements. The council is concerned about the growing number of tents in the city centre and the impact they have on rough sleepers. All the indicators show that the outcomes are worse for rough sleepers who continue to sleep on the streets than for those who come in and access support services. Unfortunately, tents can give a false sense of security. Tragically, 2 of the last 4 rough sleeper deaths in the city happened in tents. Consequently, the council is clear about its duty of care to rough sleepers in the city. We only want to save lives and help people. We'll be issuing the following advice to tent dwellers with the clear objective of encouraging them to engage with our services. We will not remove any occupied tent unless a suitable offer of accommodation has been made, taking into account the personal circumstances and wishes of each individual. A wide range of holistic services are available on a daily basis for individuals, including medical and drug and alcohol services, alongside accommodation services. Links to these press releases will be available in the show notes. Back to Joe. Is there more that can be done to encourage people to use these services?
Well, I think everybody can play a part in that. So obviously we've got the outreach teams working, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think residents can play a part in that. So, asking why people aren't engaging, what is it that's stopping them from doing that? The danger, and another area of complexity is that people are becoming engaged because they're vulnerable in various criminal activity. So we have county lines and we have people involved in county lines who are deliberately targeting vulnerable, homeless people, rough sleepers, to become engaged in their drug running across county lines right through to Pembrokeshire. So I have absolute personal experience of this through constituents, who've come to see me, where they have been targeted by criminal gangs and they're being used.
County lines is a police term for an organised crime group or urban gang from an area such as London or Birmingham who extend their dealing across county boundaries. Children and vulnerable adults are often targeted to transport the drugs and collect the cash on behalf of dealers in order to help the gang avoid being caught. Gangs coerce them with cash rewards or force them through intimidation and violence. County line drug dealing has become a national problem in Wales and has become a priority for the country's police forces. From April 2018 to 19, South Wales Police reported 66 county line related disruptions. Using vulnerable adults, often those who are homeless, is a form of exploitation. Police today work with partner organisations such as the Red Cross to safeguard those being exploited and convict perpetrators under the Modern Slavery Act.
There was a period during the winter where we had tents in the city centre. Now, I absolutely understand why people would want to give out tents to help people have somewhere to stay if they've got nowhere else to go. But that generous sort of charitable act in itself then created another layer of complexity because there were people being violently assaulted and there was drug use going on inside the tents. And, you know, the tents were full of used needles, they were full of human excrement. They were then creating a danger for members of the public. So there's no easy solution to this. Everybody's got to try and work together, and I do think that stakeholders, the council, charities are doing their very best in very difficult circumstances. But until we address the fundamental issue, which is why people are on the streets in the first place, so going back to the austerity and public sector funding cuts, and the way in which our social security system is run, until that is resolved, you know, we will continue to have this problem.
The tents. Mm-hmm. I was going to bring this up. I went to visit Queen Street before Christmas and there were a lot of tents. Not the most pleasant or inviting living situation. It was quite eye-opening. There was a lot of commotion on social media about the council moving people and tents on. I'm guessing that was a health and safety precaution?
Yeah. So no tents are ever removed unless they have been abandoned. And, you know, the council have put out lots of statements about this because, again, social media rumours, you know, generate and gain momentum and go viral. But no tents are removed unless the tent and whatever's inside it has been abandoned. And it's the same with the police. You know, you mentioned earlier about police moving people on. You know, the police know they will be challenged unless they're carrying out their duties in accordance with the law properly. And so, you know, they're in a very difficult situation as well. I keep using the word complex, but it is very complex. So I have lots of constituents coming to see me and I have lots of people who visit Cardiff and then email me afterwards because they've looked up whoever the MP is for Cardiff Central, saying to me, you know, I came to Cardiff, there was aggressive begging going on. It was very frightening. My children were frightened. I'm not going to come to Cardiff again because, you know, I don't want to put my children in that sort of situation. So it has all kinds of consequences, not just for the people who are without a roof over their heads, but as I say, other people taking advantage of them, criminal gangs taking advantage, and then actually intimidating and threatening and sometimes harassing members of the public and visitors to the city. So the police have got a really difficult job, the council have got a really difficult job, and actually residents are in a very difficult situation because quite often they want to try and intervene or they want to try and help, but they're very scared to do so.
On your website, you have a page about homelessness. You mentioned that in 5 years, the council are aiming to try and ensure there are no more rough sleepers. That was only written 6 months ago. Do you think the current scheme of things is turbulent times? Do you see that happening, both on a local and national level? Do you think things are going to improve?
Well, I certainly think that the will in our city is there to make it improve. And resources, you know, decreasing budgets, but more resources are being put into trying to make sure that that is successful. So, for example, between January and March this year, there was, I'm just looking at some figures from the council now, you know, there were 73% of people who were involved in the reconnection service that the council runs, engaging with services. There were successful outcomes. 2018 to 2019, 157 rough sleepers have been assisted into accommodation against a target of 168 rough sleepers. So that's a pretty good outcome in very difficult circumstances. As I say, we've still got emergency beds that are empty every night. Additional funding's been put in. There are lots of other things that go on during the day to help people, because obviously the hostels are only open in the night. So I think the will is there, but it does need this fundamental shift in national policy around social security, sanctions. Universal credit has been terrible. That it needs to be paused and, in my view, stopped, because it's not the solution to how we rationalise and make it easier for people to claim social security for the safety net that they need. But of course, all this is happening at the time when Brexit is simply paralysing government, and nothing is, literally nothing is being done about all these areas of need by the UK government.
The way things are going, the way it stands, the future for homelessness in Cardiff, is it bright?
Well, I certainly think, as I say, the will is there. So as well as all the things that I've talked about, we're also building new council houses in our city. And in the centre of the city, there's not much space to build on, but we are doing, all sorts of innovative solutions. So just this week, the council has got a new project where shipping containers are being fitted out as homes with double glazing and heating and all that sort of thing. Really innovative solutions, because we've got not much space, but we've got a big demand. So, I am hopeful, but we've got to address that underlying problem, which is austerity.
Austerity would appear to affect homelessness for a number of reasons, both directly and indirectly. There are a multitude of reasons people are homeless, two of which spring to mind are mental health and drug abuse, drug addiction. Of course, one of the big things we hear about at the moment is the future of the NHS, with funding, being limited. Would you say
there's also an issue around police funding cuts? So, the reason why we've got more drugs on our streets is because police numbers have been cut, and so drug gangs and criminals preying on vulnerable people are taking advantage of the situation. So the police can, they're almost fighting a losing battle in terms of county lines. And that then is feeding into demand for NHS services, and also into what is pretty much an endemic of growing mental ill health across the country. So it's difficult, and it needs government to step up with long-term strategy, with long-term funding, and deciding what they think is a priority.
Jo Stevens, MP for Cardiff Central. We'll hear more from Jo later on with some advice. In the meantime, looking towards the future is something I've asked all of my guests. The aim of this programme is to inform, expose and raise awareness for this problem. I've heard people and projects out there making a difference, but with obstacles in the way, funding cuts, rising crime and Brexit dominating the headlines, what does the future hold?
Final question is, what more can be done and what do you hope for the future?
Well, and I've been saying this since I started. Actually, so I've been in my current job for about a year now, and different roles and different projects, but all working with rough sleepers intervention. Before that, I was doing voluntary work, and before that, I was homeless myself. And since starting this job, my perceptions of what I thought were needed to assist people have radically changed. And my ideas that I thought would be great, I realise are unfeasible. Things like one of the main issues that we have is that a lot of people who are homeless stay homeless for some time. They get in a cycle of homelessness that is very difficult to break, and we see them being homeless for quite a period of time, years even. And it's difficult to find that line where you're providing a service that will assist somebody and enable somebody to be the kind of person that they always were able to be. You want to enable somebody to be able to bring their life back together. They're the person who needs to do it. While providing these services, we can often make people entrenched by providing stuff that makes it more comfortable for them to be stuck in that position, particularly if they are using, substances. Because for a lot of these guys, a uncomfortable and horrific mundanity is preferable to taking on some of the issues that they have, not just because they're difficult to take and they require fortitude mentally, but also because physically they are hard to do. These substances are hard to kick, for example. Mentally, asking somebody for assistance is hard to do. I think that it's not just a case of saying throw more money at it, although we are definitely in need of focus. I think we absolutely need to have our government look at the homelessness as a priority issue, because the idea that anybody should be out in the kind of weather we've been seeing over the last couple of days, let alone how much worse it's going to get, is ludicrous. And I hope that nobody ever stops thinking that it's ludicrous. And I think that the second that you look at it, you can appreciate that. We are constantly failing the most vulnerable and the poorest, and without placing a focus, without acknowledging that issue, it's not going to change. We have a strong community in Cardiff, I've got to say, with regards to people giving their help, their assistance. We have companies that assist with the breakfast run. We have companies that provide sleeping bags. But these kind of things are staunching a wound. They're not fixing the actual problem. We're fixing the symptoms, and we're not hitting the root cause. And our organisations are never going to be able to afford to build these houses. We need more houses, more affordable houses, and we need more shelters as well, where people who might not be able to get into their own accommodation for whatever reason are still given a room and a place of their own and the support that they need to live the life that they want to live. That's the main issue. We just do not have the space. We don't have the places for them to go. And while these charities can do the cleaning up work as much as they can, and they do an excellent job, it should never be their problem to begin with. And we've let it get to a point where we've accepted homelessness as a norm, which is why some people can walk down the street, see 5-10 homeless people on one large street in Cardiff and think nothing of it, while they go to the next shop and go and make their purchase.
That's exactly what I said in my introduction. That's what I see.
Thomas has first-hand knowledge of this issue. I'm immensely grateful that he agreed to talk on tape and share his story. He carries a powerful message on all aspects of the homeless crisis. Before we finished, I asked Thomas what you, the listener, can do to help.
Ask people in these organisations, how can I help? So beyond volunteering, there is the StreetLink app that you can use to report people that you see who are rough sleepers who are in distress. There's Big Moose Coffee that employs homeless people and is run for the benefit of the homeless community. Buy a coffee from there instead of Starbucks. I mean, it's a small thing, but starting with the small things is the good way to get somebody who hasn't volunteered to start. You can't just immediately jump into donating 5 hours of your day. Nobody, not everybody has that time. But just start small. Do the small changes. Ask. Try and get to spend that time, with somebody who is homeless. Try to spend time with those voluntary organisations that work with them, and see what you can do to best assist.
One of the burning questions that people ask is about the etiquette on giving money to rough sleepers. Here's some thought-provoking insight from Thomas.
If you want to give money, that's completely up to you. But if you're going to give money and you're going to judge whether it's right to give money based on what you think that person's going to spend it on, then keep it. keep that money and walk away, because you're taking away that person's autonomy. You're going to give money to some people who are in the street who do have addiction issues and alcohol issues. But if you think that it's right to pick and choose what that person wants and needs, then you can keep your money. That autonomy, that ability to make your own decisions is important.
That's what I see. I think we'll stop it there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was perfect. That is a perfect end to this interview.
I'm glad you think you'll be able to use it.
Today, Thomas continues to work with charities in Cardiff, helping those in need with food, shelter and rehabilitation.
I really don't know.
I don't know if there's a lot being done.
I don't think there's a lot being done about it.
The 22 participants from Cardiff University raised a total of £2,988 for local and national charities, including Crisis, Women's Aid, Save the Children and Shelter Cymru.
Does it worry you at all that you could one day become homeless?
Sleep Out continues to be run twice a year during the winter months.
Yeah, definitely. Especially kind of as a student, it's quite not like, obviously we're privileged and we're here and we're studying at a wonderful university, but you're left in so much debt. Unless you have a safe space, like a family place to go back to, or family inheritance or parents that can support you, you could potentially be left with nothing and so much debt. So it is quite a reasonable fear.
Homelessness amongst young people is a real and ever-present danger, with around 40% of local authorities in 2018 reporting an increase, and 55% of homelessness services seeing an increase in demand.
So, a personal story of a guy who's lost his house and his family in a house fire, and that left him homeless. And that, when he told me that, because I stopped to talk to him, it really hit home that people don't just become homeless because they can't be bothered to go and work and stuff. They become homeless due to situations that they can't help, and that made me really want to help out and stuff.
For those listening who are facing homelessness or know someone who is facing homelessness, I asked Jo Stevens for her professional advice. What is your advice to those facing homelessness in Cardiff?
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, if you're potentially facing homelessness, the thing to do is don't leave it till the last minute to try and come and get help. So, there are services available. Come and see your MP, go and see your assembly member, go and see your local councillors. There is help there, but it needs to be accessed early on, because the earlier that I see somebody, the better the chance of being able to resolve the problem. And for people who are already, who have already lost their homes, again, access the services. Come and see me, come and see the assembly member, come and see the councillors, talk to housing options at the council, engage with citizens' advice. There are services there to try and help.
How can those living in Cardiff who see this problem day to day, what can they do to lend a hand?
They can contact the outreach team. So this is the team of people that are out all the time, day and night, trying to get people to come and access services, to engage. So call the outreach team and report where people are, say, where you've seen them, what the problem is, and the outreach team will go and talk to them. Chances are they probably know them, they've talked to them before, but we need to keep having the conversation so that we can get people with very complex needs inside, in the warm, and able to access help.
And to those living outside of Cardiff, in other cities, other towns, should they be contacting their MP?
Well, they should. And so I want local authorities in areas where there is very little provision, statutory provision only, essentially. I want them to be doing more. Now, they're under the same sort of budgetary pressures as any other local authority like Cardiff, but Cardiff cannot deal with everyone. So we need, every local authority, whatever their political colour, to step up.
In Series 2 of Think Tank the podcast, episodes had a corresponding charity to support. For this documentary, there are too many charities to choose from, as they all do such incredible work for the homeless community. You can find a list of organisations, both local and national, in the show notes and on our website, thinktank.fm/documentary. With thanks to Thomas, to Paul and Ginger, all of the students from Cardiff University Students' Union who took part that night at the sleep out, and to the staff and organisers. To my friend on Twitter, you put me in touch with many people in the homeless community and shared a lot of personal stories. You know who you are, thank you for your help. To Martin at Glenwood Church Centre and to Joe Stevens MP. This project has been co-produced by Tanya Harrington. The beautiful music you hear behind me was composed and created by the endlessly talented Rowan Lees. Find his work at thinktank.fm/music. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public and all other streaming platforms, now including YouTube and Vimeo. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts. Think Tank Investigates is part of the Think Tank podcast family. Find more original podcasts at thinktank.fm. I'm Harry Bly. This has been Think Tank Investigates, Cardiff's Homeless Crisis.